Welcome to the McAfee Taft webinar series. The topic for this webinar, navigating the FLSA minefield. On its face, the Fair Labor Standards Act seems pretty straightforward, establishing a federal minimum wage and setting standards for overtime pay, record keeping, and the employment of youth. But as most employers know, complying with the nation's wage and hour law can be a confusing and sometimes dangerous minefield to navigate. In fact, wage and hour disputes are a hotbed of litigation. In this presentation, we will identify the most common FLSA missteps employers make, address the additional impact of state wage and hour laws on compliance efforts, and provide practical advice for minimizing legal liability and litigation. Our presenters are McAfee Taft labor and employment attorneys Kirk and Harrison Kosmider. They represent employers in all phases of employment law and labor relations and are frequent speakers and authors on workplace issues.
Thanks, Brad. Harrison and I are excited to be here to talk about a very exciting, riveting topic for most human resources professionals and employers. We're going to talk about the Fair Labor Standards Act today. Harrison, excited to be here?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is just kind of give an overview of the law, and then we're going to walk through what we see are the big hurdles and big potential risk for employers as it relates to this law. And many of you out there have been involved in pay issues, and so this is an opportunity for us just to kind of talk through those issues and make sure that people are well prepared. This is certainly an area of litigation explosion. We've seen lots and lots of lawsuits, and we're going to talk about some of those today. And some of those are, we do it with the best of intention in terms of the way we pay people, and we just do it wrong. And we just need to make sure that we're in compliance and that we understand the risk if we're not in compliance of not paying people in accordance with this particular law. So let's just start on what is the Fair Labor Standards Act. It's a federal law. So remember, we got two different types of laws. We got federal laws and state laws, and many states have their own wage and hour laws, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. But this is the federal law that covers all states, and so it's sort of the floor. You can't do less than what the federal law requires, but you can certainly require employers to pay more. And many states have done that. So it was enacted in 1938. It was back in the time when the post-Depression, and we're seeing employers that are taking advantage of people. They're not paying them for the hours that they're working. They're paying them meager wages. And so what Congress did is really created this law to try to address those situations and child labor issues as it relates to employing people under the age of 16. So what it covers is the minimum wage. We have a minimum wage in the United States today. It's $7.25 an hour. There is lots of debate about the minimum wage, lots of debate about wages in general, and as there's been this movement for $15 an hour minimum wage. But today the law is you can't pay an employee that's covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act less than $7.25 an hour for the time that they work. It also requires overtime pay, and that overtime pay is for employees that work more than 40 hours in a work week. A work week is 168 consecutive hours that starts on a day and ends 7 days later. The employer can set their work week. They can start it on a Wednesday and end it on Tuesday. They can start it on a Saturday and end it on a Friday. They can't change weeks every week to try to mess with people's pay. But what they can do is set the pay week. And once the pay week is set, then if somebody works more than 40 hours in that 168-hour period, then they get paid overtime. And overtime is defined as time and a half of that employee's regular rate of pay. And so the regular rate of pay is going to become a big issue. And Harrison, we're going to talk about that in some detail. And then we've got record keeping requirements. There are 12 specific records that we have to keep, and Harrison's going to spend some time talking about that. And then the last is child labor standards for covered employers. These address situations where there are limitations on people who are under the age of 16 and they're working in a non-hazardous non-manufacturing environment. So people that are working in a hazardous environment or mining or working in manufacturing, they have to be at least 18 years of age in order to be able to be employed there.